Welcome to Saltwater Stories. Imagine a sea, but not one with shores, no sandy beaches or rocky coasts. Instead, picture a vast area in the ocean defined only by swirling currents, a place where golden forests drift on the waves. What could this boundless floating world possibly be?
That sounds like a riddle wrapped in an enigma, doesn't it? A sea without shores.
It really is. And today we're exploring that very place, the Sargasso Sea. You might have heard it called a golden floating rainforest. It's this, enormous area, 2 million square miles. And it's the only sea on our planet with absolutely no land borders.
2 million square miles, that's just staggering. And its identity comes from seaweed.
Exactly. Its defining feature is these huge floating mats of golden brown seaweed called sargassum. That's what gives it its name and its unique character.
So what actually holds this sea together if there's no land? You mentioned currents.
That's the key. Unlike, say, the Mediterranean, which is enclosed by land, the Sargasso Sea's boundaries are entirely made of water currents. Think of the North Atlantic gyre. It's this giant, slow, circular movement of water.
Okay, a gyre, like a massive ocean whirlpool?
Kind of, yeah. A very, very big and slow one. You've got 4 major currents forming the sides. The powerful Gulf Stream on the west.
Right, I know that one.
Then the North Atlantic current up north, the Canary current flowing down the east side, and the North Atlantic equatorial current closing it off in the south, all moving clockwise.
So these currents act like invisible walls corralling the water inside.
Precisely. They keep the water within the Sargasso Sea distinct from the rest of the Atlantic. It's a sea defined purely by ocean dynamics.
Fascinating. And where exactly would we find it on a map?
Roughly, it's between 20 and 35 degrees north latitude and 40 to 70 degrees west longitude. If you're looking for a landmark, well, the islands of Bermuda are actually located near its western edge.
Ah, Bermuda. So it's out there in the mid-Atlantic. Are those current boundaries fixed, though?
No, that's another interesting thing. They're quite dynamic. They shift around with the seasons and, other oceanographic factors. It's even linked to atmospheric things like the Azores high-pressure system.
So it breathes, in a way, expands and contracts. How do scientists handle that when they want to study or perhaps protect it?
Good question. Groups like the Sargasso Sea Alliance have defined a specific study area. It's generally drawn as a large oval, mostly staying outside of national waters, the EZs.
Exclusive economic zones, right?
Exactly. But it does include the waters around Bermuda because Bermuda is so central to its location.
Makes sense. You mentioned the gyre traps water. What does that mean for the sea itself?
Well, because the water circulates so slowly within this gyre, it can stay inside the Sargasso Sea for a very long time. Some estimates say up to 50 years for a parcel of water.
50 years?
Yeah. And that's why the sargassum seaweed builds up there, gets caught in this slow swirl and accumulates. But here's the downside.
Uh-oh. There's always a catch, isn't there?
There often is. That same trapping mechanism means that anything else floating out there for a long time also gets concentrated. And unfortunately, that includes plastics.
Ah, the North Atlantic garbage patch. I've heard of that. It's in the Sargasso Sea.
A large part of it, yes. The same currents that gather the life-giving seaweed also gather our trash. It's this really stark duality, a unique natural habitat and a major pollution sink side by side.
That's sobering. Okay, let's look inside this sea without shores. What's the water itself like? Is it different?
It definitely has its own characteristics. Generally, the water is quite warm. Surface temperatures change with the seasons, maybe by 8 to 10 degrees Celsius or so. There's a specific area, the subtropical convergence zone, mostly in the west, where you get these fronts, temperature boundaries, especially in fall and spring, as different water masses meet.
And saltiness. Is it extra salty or less?
It's actually known for being quite salty, high salinity. Think about it, it's subtropical, lots of sun, high evaporation, and not a huge amount of rainfall right there. So yeah, the salt levels are typically between 35.1 and 36.7 parts per thousand.
High evaporation, less rain. Makes sense. And I've heard the water is incredibly clear.
Oh, exceptionally clear. Deep, beautiful blue. Sometimes underwater visibility can reach up to 60 meters.
60 meters. That's astonishingly clear water. Why so clear?
It's largely because the open water doesn't have a high concentration of phytoplankton, those tiny plant-like organisms that make water greener or cloudier elsewhere. The warm surface water tends to form layers, which stops nutrients from the deeper, colder water mixing up easily. So scientists often describe the open Sargasso as oligotrophic.
Allotrophic, meaning?
Nutrient poor, low in the essential nutrients that phytoplankton need to bloom in large numbers.
Got it. So clear, warm, salty, nutrient poor, open water. What about underneath? Is it deep?
Very deep. It ranges quite a bit, from about 1,500 meters down to, well, over 7,000 meters in places. The seabed isn't just flat either. You've got vast abyssal plains, but also significant underwater mountains, seamounts, like the New England and Corner Ice chains.
Wow, deep canyons and mountains hidden below. You said the boundary currents are strong, but what about inside the sea? Is it calm?
Relatively speaking, yes. Compared to the Gulf Stream, the interior is much calmer. Historically, this area was known as the horse latitudes.
Horse latitudes. Why that name?
The story goes that sailing ships could get stuck there for days or weeks with no wind, and sometimes, sadly, they had to throw horses overboard to conserve water. So yes, it can be very calm on the surface.
A grim history behind the name, but is it completely still down below?
Not entirely. It's influenced by what are called mesoscale eddies. These are like smaller swirling pools of water, tens to hundreds of kilometers across. Some spin off the Gulf Stream carrying colder water, others trap warmer Sargasso water. These eddies cause localized upwelling and downwelling, bringing deeper water up or pushing surface water down.
Ah, so they stir things up a bit locally, affecting nutrients maybe?
Exactly. They play a role in distributing heat, salt, and yes, nutrients, and even organisms. And that subtropical convergence zone also creates more dynamic water movement. So while it might seem still on the surface, there's definitely complex movement happening underneath.
Always more going on beneath the surface in the ocean. Okay, let's talk about the star of the show, the sargassum itself. What kind of seaweed is it?
Right, sargassum. It's a type of brown macroalgae, basically. Large seaweed, looks very distinctive, branched, with leaf-like blades and these little berry-like spheres.
Air bladders.
Exactly, called pneumatocysts. They're filled with gas, mostly oxygen, actually, and that's what keeps the seaweed floating right at the surface. Buoyancy is key.
And what makes the Sargasso Sea's sargassum so special compared to seaweed you find on the beach?
The crucial difference is that the two main species here, Sargassum natans and Sargassum fluitans, are holopelagic.
Holopelagic.
It means they spend their entire life cycle floating freely in the open ocean. They don't need to attach to the seabed like most seaweeds. They reproduce just by breaking apart vegetative reproduction.
Wow, so they just drift and multiply out there, no roots needed.
None at all. They're perfectly adapted for this drifting life, and you can even tell the main species apart. S. natans has longer, narrower leaves and a little spike on its air bladder, while S. fluitans has broader leaves and no spike.
Amazing adaptation. How does it form those huge mats people talk about?
It gathers together naturally. You find everything from small clumps to these massive continuous mats that can stretch for miles. Wind and currents push them together, often forming long lines called windrows, especially where currents converge.
And they just stay floating.
Mostly. Strong mixing can sometimes push them down temporarily, but they're very buoyant, so they usually pop back up. Eventually, though, when the seaweed gets old or damaged, it loses that buoyancy and sinks.
Sinks where?
Down into the deep sea, which is actually important because it carries carbon down from the surface, providing food and energy for deep sea creatures. A link between the surface and the abyss.
A complete life cycle, from surface to seabed. You mentioned earlier this interesting contrast, nutrient-poor water, but rich life in the seaweed. How does that work?
Yes, it's a fascinating ecological contrast. While the surrounding water column might be described as almost a biological desert in terms of phytoplankton.
Because of the low nutrients?
Right. But the sargassum mats themselves are teeming with life. They become these concentrated hotspots of biodiversity and productivity. Think of them as floating oases.
Oases in the ocean desert.
Exactly. Research suggests the overall productivity in the Sargasso Sea region might actually be quite high, perhaps even comparable to some productive colder seas. It seems the clear water lets sunlight penetrate deep, allowing the sargassum to thrive. Plus, tiny microbes living on the seaweed can actually fix nitrogen gas from the air into a usable form, a key nutrient. And nutrients get recycled very efficiently within the mat community.
So the seaweed itself and the life it supports creates its own fertile environment.
Pretty much. The sargassum provides the physical structure, the foundation, and the community living within it helps sustain the productivity. It's a self-contained floating ecosystem.
A true golden floating rainforest. Okay, let's explore inside that rainforest. What creatures actually live there?
Oh, it's a whole world. The mats provide structure, food, hiding places from predators, even a place to breed and for young ones to grow up safely.
So a nursery too?
Definitely a crucial nursery. You start with a really small stuffed bacteria, microscopic algae growing on the sargassum itself, called epiphytes. Then you have a huge range of invertebrates.
Like what kind of invertebrates?
All sorts. Tiny crustaceans, shrimp, and crabs adapted just for this environment. Hydroids, which are related to jellyfish, snails, sea slugs, worms, even things like sea spiders and tunicates. Estimates suggest over 100 different invertebrate species live in close association with the sargassum.
100 species just clinging to the seaweed. That's incredible diversity.
It really is. And of course, all these smaller creatures, plus the seaweed itself, provide food for larger animals.
Like fish.
Lots of fish. Maybe between 100 and 280 different species use the sargassum at some stage. Then you got sea turtles using it, especially young ones. Seabirds rest and feed there, maybe 25 or so species. And marine mammals, too. Around 30 types of whales and dolphins are known to pass through or use the area.
It's a critical hub. Are any of these animals found only there? True Sargasso Sea specialists.
Yes. That's one of the coolest parts. There are about 10 species considered endemic to the sargassum community, found nowhere else. And many of them have developed the most amazing camouflage.
Like the sargassum fish. I think I've seen pictures. It barely looks like a fish.
Histrio. It's a classic example. A total master of disguise.
Yeah.
Its body is covered in flaps and fleshy bits that look exactly like the seaweed, and it can even change color to match perfectly.
Wow.
And get this, its fins are modified. They look like little hands, and it uses them to actually climb through the sargassum strands.
Climbing fish. That's fantastic.
Isn't it? And like other anglerfish, it has a little lure on its head to attract prey. It spends its entire life in the sargassum. While you might find them in dristing patches elsewhere, this is their true home turf. And apparently they can be cannibalistic too.
A well-camouflaged, climbing, cannibalistic fish. Nature is wild. Any other endemics?
Well, yes. There's the sargassum crab, the sargassum pipefish related to seahorses, the sargassum shrimp, various little sargassum sea slugs, all uniquely adapted to blend in and live within this golden jungle.
A whole suite of creatures built for this specific world. But you also mentioned migratory species rely on it heavily.
Hugely important for travelers, yes. It's not just a permanent home, it's a vital stopover, a feeding station, a migration corridor, and for some, a very specific destination for reproduction.
Like the eels. That story is amazing.
The Atlantic eels, yes. American and European eels.
Yeah.
It's almost unbelievable. But the Sargasso Sea is the only place on the entire planet where we know both species go to spend.
The only place for both.
As far as we know, yes. They live most of their lives in freshwater rivers in North America or Europe and North Africa. But when it's time to reproduce, they undertake this incredible migration thousands of miles back to the Sargasso Sea.
And then what happens?
They spawn there and then they die. Their larvae, these tiny, transparent, leaf-shaped things called leptocephali, drift on the ocean currents for months, sometimes years, gradually making their way back toward the continents. When they reach coastal waters, they transform into glass eels, then elvers, move into freshwater, grow into yellow eels, and finally, years later, become silver eels, ready to make that long journey back to the Sargasso Sea to complete the cycle. The European eel is critically endangered now, making this spawning ground even more precious.
An absolutely epic life cycle centered on this one sea. Who else depends on it for migration or early life?
Sea turtles are a big one. Those sargassum mats are like floating nurseries for tiny baby turtles. After hatching on beaches far away, little loggerheads, green turtles, hawksbills, Kemp's redleys, they find their way out to the sargassum.
They're lost years, right?
Exactly. They spend their first crucial years hiding among the seaweed, finding food, growing bigger and stronger. The U.S. actually designates sargassum areas as critical habitat for young loggerheads under the Endangered Species Act.
So it's officially recognized as vital for them. What about bigger animals? Whales, sharks?
Whales and dolphins, definitely. At least 30 species use it as a migration corridor. Humpback whales pass through in large numbers, heading to and from breeding grounds. Sperm whales are found there too, sometimes mothers with calves. For sharks, it's a pathway, maybe an important feeding area for some. We know white marlin and dolphinfish spawn there. And get this, the endangered porbeagle shark migrates all the way from Canada to give birth there.
Pups born in the Sargasso. Amazing.
Yeah. And scientists think species like white sharks, whale sharks, tiger sharks, basking sharks probably use it during their migrations too.
And commercially important fish. Does it matter for fisheries?
Immensely. It's a vital nursery for the young of many species people like to catch and eat. Mahi-mahi, jacks, amberjacks, tuna, billfish like marlin, wahoo, triggerfish. Even flying fish lay their eggs right on the sargassum.
So the health of the Sargasso Sea directly impacts fisheries far away.
Absolutely. It's designated essential fish habitat in the U.S. for this reason. And larger migratory fish, big predators like bluefin tuna, big-eye tuna, swordfish, they come into the Sargasso Sea to feed as well. And let's not forget seabirds using it as a crucial resting and feeding spot on long ocean journeys, including the endangered Bermuda petrel, the cahao.
It really is a keystone ecosystem for the entire North Atlantic. Okay, let's switch gears a bit. How did humans first perceive this strange sea? You mentioned Columbus.
Yes, Columbus's voyage in 1492 gives us the first really definitive written account. He noted the vast weed patches and, crucially, being becalmed stuck with no wind for 3 days. That combination really stuck in sailors' minds.
And the name Sargasso, where did that come from?
Most likely from Portuguese sailors around the same time. The little air bladders on the seaweed apparently reminded them of a type of small grape called sargasso, or sargasso. So it's named directly after the seaweed.
Makes sense. What was the immediate reaction from Columbus's crew and early sailors? Were they intrigued? Scared?
Definitely more scared than intrigued initially. Seeing all that weed usually meant shallow water, danger of running aground. They were in the deep ocean, but the visual cue was alarming. Plus, getting stuck without wind so far from home, they feared they'd get tangled, dragged down, or just never make it back.
So these fears fueled legends.
Absolutely. For centuries, maritime lore painted the Sargasso Sea as this terrifying place where ships got trapped in impenetrable weed, a sort of graveyard of the ocean full of derelict vessels. The reality of sailing slowly in the light winds of the horse latitudes certainly helped feed these stories.
Were ships actually getting trapped and sunk by seaweed?
Not really, no. The fears of entanglement were largely unfounded. The sargassum isn't dense or strong enough to immobilize or sink large ships, but the idea was powerful.
And this image persisted in culture.
Oh yeah. Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea described it as incredibly thick, almost solid. And later, in the 20th century, the mystery deepened when it got linked to the legends of the Bermuda Triangle, reviving those old myths of a strange, dangerous patch of ocean.
From monster seaweed to the Bermuda Triangle. Quite a reputation. Did it play any practical role in navigation, apart from scaring people?
Well, ironically for Columbus, seeing the sargassum at first actually gave him hope, because seaweed usually meant land was near. And its location is central to Bermuda's history, too, after the shipwreck of the Sea Venture there in 1609, which led to its settlement. But mostly, it was a place to be avoided if possible.
How did we move from these myths to a scientific understanding?
Slowly, through exploration. Big scientific expeditions like HMS Challenger in the 1870s started collecting samples and data. Early 20th century researchers, and then people like William Beebe, doing his famous deep-sea dives near Bermuda, began to peel back the layers of myth and reveal the actual ecosystem.
So a long historical disconnect between the legend and the scientific reality.
Exactly. Centuries of fear and folklore born from the challenges of early sailing and misinterpretations versus the reality of a dynamic, navigable, and incredibly important marine ecosystem.
Which brings us back to its importance. Let's summarize why the Sargasso Sea is considered such a keystone in the Atlantic.
Okay, so first, it's a biodiversity hotspot within the sargassum habitat itself, even if the surrounding water is less productive. It has those unique endemic species found nowhere else.
Right, the specialists.
Second, it's critical habitat in a nursery. That floating structure is essential for shelter, feeding, breeding, especially for young commercial fish and endangered sea turtles.
The nurseries and safe havens.
Third, it's that vital spawning and migration hub, the only known spawning site for Atlantic eels and a crucial corridor and feeding ground for whales, dolphins, sharks, turtles, big fish.
The Grand Central Station of the Atlantic?
Something like that. Fourth, it plays a big role in ocean processes, especially carbon sequestration. The sargassum takes up CO2, and when it sinks, that carbon gets stored in the deep sea for potentially long periods.
Climate regulation.
Yes, and it's a key place to study how microbes cycle nutrients and carbon in the ocean processes, vital for the whole planet's health. Long-term research there, like the BATIS program in Bermuda, is crucial for understanding this.
And what about direct value to humans? Ecosystem services.
Well, there are the fisheries it supports, both commercial and recreational, estimated around $100 million annually. It supports tourism elsewhere by being a haven for species people travel to see, like turtles and whales. The European eel fishery alone, totally dependent on sargasso spawning, could be worth over $60 million a year. Plus oxygen production, that carbon storage, and potential future discoveries from its unique genetic resources. It provides a lot.
Clearly a place worth protecting, but as you hinted earlier with the plastics, it's facing some serious threats.
Sadly, yes. Big ones. Plastic pollution is definitely major. The North Atlantic Gyre concentrates trash, creating that garbage patch. We're talking over 200,000 pieces of plastic per square kilometer in some areas, mostly microplastics.
And the impact on wildlife?
Severe. Animals mistake it for food, they get entangled, they're exposed to toxins absorbed by the plastic. Research has found microplastics inside young fish living in the sargassum nurseries, potentially reaching harmful levels. And cleanup is incredibly difficult because the pieces are so tiny and spread out.
A pervasive problem. What about climate change? How is that affecting the Sargasso?
It's hitting it from multiple angles. Surface waters have warmed significantly, about 1 degree Celsius over 40 years, and the warming seems to be accelerating. This affects where species can live, their basic physiology, predator-prey relationships, the whole web.
And ocean acidification.
That's another major one. The waters become significantly more acidic over the same period, potentially already outside the natural range seen in the 1980s. This is a direct threat to anything building shells or skeletons, like some plankton, maybe corals or sponges on the seamounts. It might even interfere with migration cues for animals like eels.
Warming and acidification. What else?
We're also seeing deoxygenation, a drop in dissolved oxygen in the surface waters, about 6% in 40 years, which stresses marine life. And there have been subtle long-term increases in salinity too. Plus, extreme climate events, like a strong weather pattern called a negative NAO back in 2009-10, might have actually helped spread sargassum out of the Sargasso Sea, potentially seeding those massive blooms we now see elsewhere.
The Great Atlantic Sargassum Belt, is that related?
It seems likely related, yes. These huge blooms that have been washing up on Caribbean and West African coasts since 2011 appear to have been initially seeded by sargassum, possibly flushed out of the Sargasso Sea region during that unusual climate event. Now, they seem fueled by increased nutrients in the tropical Atlantic from rivers, maybe atmospheric dust, changes in ocean mixing. It's a huge problem ecologically and economically for coastal areas, but it's distinct from, though connected to, the traditional Sargasso Sea ecosystem.
A complex, connected issue. Are there other direct human pressures? Shipping? Fishing?
Yes, to both. The Sargasso Sea sees significant shipping traffic. This brings risks of ships colliding with migrating whales, underwater noise pollution that disrupts marine mammals, physical damage if ships plow through dense mats, oil spills or routine pollution, and the introduction of invasive species in ballast water.
And fishing.
Fishing pressures are a concern too, particularly bycatch, accidentally catching non-target species like turtles, sharks, eels, seabirds, marine mammals, and juvenile fish in gear like long lines and purse seines used near the sargassum. This is a major threat to protected species. Overfishing of stocks that use the sargasso, like the European eel, is also a problem, and illegal unreported fishing makes things worse.
What about harvesting the sargassum itself? Is that a threat?
It's a potential threat. There's growing interest in using sargassum for biofuels, fertilizers, animal feed, even pharmaceuticals. But large-scale removal could devastate the unique community that depends entirely on it. There's also a complication. Sargassum naturally accumulates heavy metals, especially arsenic.
Arsenic?
Yes, particularly when phosphorus is limited in the water. Its uptake of arsenic increases. This poses risks if it's used in food or animal feed, and even for workers handling large decaying piles, which can release toxic gases. So exploitation needs very careful consideration.
Wow. Plastics, climate change impacts, shipping, fishing, potential harvesting, links to coastal blooms. It's facing a barrage of interconnected threats.
It really is, and these threats often interact. Climate change can affect how pollutants spread. Warming might make animals more vulnerable to other stresses. It highlights the need for a holistic approach to conservation.
So what's being done on the research front to understand all this better? Are we actively studying the Sargasso Sea?
Oh, absolutely. There's vital ongoing research. Long-term monitoring is key programs like the Bermuda Atlantic Time Series Study, BATS, and Hydrostation S run out of the Bermuda Institute of Ocean Sciences, BIOS, have been collecting data for decades.
What kind of data?
Physical data like temperature, salinity, currents, chemical data like nutrients, carbon dioxide levels, acidity, oxygen, and biological data on plankton and productivity. This long-term view is invaluable for spotting trends like warming and acidification. BIOS is a major hub for Sargasso Sea research.
What are some key research questions scientists are tackling now?
Well, continuing to analyze those long-term climate trends is crucial. Understanding the currents, eddies, and water mixing in detail, studying the sargassum itself, its life cycle, nutrient needs, how it relates to the Great Atlantic Sargassum Belt, using satellites to track blooms. Assessing the biodiversity, are those endemic species okay? Are fish numbers declining? Using genetics, like metagenomics, to understand the incredibly diverse microbial communities and their role in nutrient cycles. researching the life cycles of key species like eels and turtles, and of course, studying the threats directly quantifying plastic pollution, measuring ship noise, assessing bycatch rates, looking into that arsenic accumulation, and exploring the deep sea using remotely operated vehicles, ROVs, to investigate the seamounts.
So a lot of active investigation. Any recent big discoveries or shifts in understanding?
Yes, several interesting things. Satellite data has confirmed the Great Atlantic Sargassum Belt is the largest macroalgae bloom on Earth. There's growing evidence pointing to nutrient enrichment from various sources fueling those blooms, with recent work highlighting the role of vertical mixing in the tropical Atlantic. Modeling studies support the hypothesis that the initial seeding did likely come from Sargasso Sea. Sargassum dispersed during that 2009-10 climate event.
Connecting the dots.
Right. And researchers have found distinct nutritional differences and varying arsenic levels between GSB sargassum and traditional Sargasso Sea sargassum. Perhaps concerningly, some studies comparing current surveys with historical data suggest significant declines in the small fish and invertebrates living within the Sargasso Sea sargassum over recent decades.
Oh, that doesn't sound good.
No, it's definitely a worry. On the microbial side, though, metagenomics keeps revealing far greater diversity and metabolic capability than we ever imagined. All this research directly feeds into conservation efforts, providing the evidence needed to make the case for protection.
Which leads perfectly to conservation. How do you protect a place that's mostly in the high seas outside any single country's control? That seems like a huge challenge.
It's the major challenge. Historically, the high seas have suffered from fragmented governance. You have organizations dealing with shipping, IMO, others with fishing, like ICCAT or NAFO, another for seabed mining, ISA, but no single body responsible for overall environmental protection.
A patchwork quilt of regulations.
Exactly. But there's been progress specifically for the Sargasso Sea. A key step was the Hamilton Declaration, signed in 2014. It's a non-binding political commitment by several governments, initially places like Bermuda, Monaco, the UK, US, Azores, now more, have joined to voluntarily cooperate on conservation.
Non-binding, but a statement of intent.
Yes, and it established the Sargasso Sea Commission. This isn't a management body with legal teeth, but rather a group of scientists and experts who act as stewards. They review the science, promote research, encourage voluntary action, and develop conservation proposals for those existing international bodies, like the IMO or fisheries organizations.
So they use science and diplomacy to influence the existing powers.
That's the idea. And they've had some successes. The Sargasso Sea was formally recognized internationally as an ecologically or biologically significant marine area, an EBSA, under the Convention on Biological Diversity back in 2012.
What does EBSA designation actually do?
It's a scientific recognition based on criteria like uniqueness, importance for life cycles, vulnerability, etc. That doesn't automatically create protection, but it flags the area's importance and is supposed to inform management decisions by competent authorities. It helped, for instance, in getting NAFO to put limits on bottom fishing on the seamounts in part of the area.
So some concrete measures are emerging.
Some, yes. There's ongoing engagement with fisheries, bodies like ICCAT, about managing fisheries more sustainably, considering the whole ecosystem. The U.S. prohibits commercial sargassum harvest in its federal waters. There's engagement with the shipping industry on voluntary measures like routing or speed reductions. An attempt to get it designated as a particularly sensitive sea area through the IMO hasn't succeeded yet, but the conversation continues. Collaboration with the Convention on Migratory Species is also happening for eels and others. And it's even been identified by UNESCO as a potential high seas World Heritage Site, though the process for that is still developing.
And what about the new High Seas Treaty? Does that offer hope?
A great deal of hope, potentially. The BBNJ Agreement Biodiversity Beyond National Jurisdiction was agreed in 2023. It's a legally binding treaty specifically for conserving and sustainably using marine life in the high seas.
What will it allow?
Crucially, it allows for establishing area-based management tools, including marine protected areas, MPAs, in the high seas. It also mandates environmental impact assessments for activities, sets up rules for sharing benefits from marine genetic resources, and includes capacity building. The Sargasso Sea is seen as a prime candidate for enhanced protection under this treaty. It aims to create better coordination and a more holistic approach.
But it needs to be ratified first.
Yes, it needs 60 countries to ratify it before it enters into force, and that process is underway. But the Hamilton Declaration and the Sargasso Sea Commission have been really innovative, a kind of test case for high seas governance, using political will and science diplomacy before this legally binding treaty was available. The lessons learned there could be very useful for implementing the BB&J Treaty effectively. It sounds like a unique place facing unique challenges, but also inspiring some unique conservation approaches.
It certainly is. It forces us to think differently about ocean governance and our shared responsibility for these vast areas beyond national borders.
The Sargasso Sea, this incredible expanse of floating golden seaweed, truly shows us how connected our oceans are and the amazing life they support. From that bizarre climbing sargassum fish to the incredible journeys of Atlantic eels and the vital nursery provides for sea turtles. This sea without shores is undeniably a crucial center in the North Atlantic.
A place of wonder, but also vulnerability.
Indeed. As we've learned, it's facing serious dangers from pollution, climate change, and various human activities. Protecting this unique ecosystem really requires all of us globally to work together to understand these challenges and commit to addressing them.
It's a reminder of the importance of these vast, often unseen parts of our planet.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us today on Saltwater Stories and exploring this fascinating golden floating rainforest with us.